What's up, everybody? Tim Anderson here, aka Renfell. We're getting down towards the end now. Well, I mean, the end is sort of, I guess it depends on what your version of the end is. Let me get that a little bit centered. We are at chapter 5 of book 6, which is the Steward and the King. I have a whole slew of cats here. I've got, everybody's hiding in the air conditioner. I've got Pippin, Sam, and down here on the bed, or on the chair, I've got Smeagol and Leia. So not the full complement, but we do have quite a few. What's up, Leia? Just ran at the door wanting to come in, so she doesn't come in here very often. She's apparently tired today, so let them get some sleep. All right, so we're going to be reading through this chapter today. I don't have a lot of recollection of this chapter. Again, this 20 years ago was when I read these, so I come into each one of these chapters remembering some things, but not all things. And in this case, once again, I have a vague recollection of this being the chapter where Aragorn actually takes the throne, but leaves Faramir in place as the steward, or maybe it's the prince. I don't remember. And I think this is when we start to have the celebrations and the wedding and all this. But by the way, Lord of the Rings Online, if you've not played Lord of the Rings Online, the wedding scene between Aragorn and Arwen is just chef's kiss. It is so amazingly well done. I highly recommend if you haven't played through Lord of the Rings Online to go do so. I think it might that particular quest route might be a an anniversary festival type quest. It's not available all the time, but if you can come across it, it's so worth doing. Anyway, if you're returning, you know all these things. We do this every week on Mondays. Mondays in Middle Earth. We started with The Hobbit. We went through the entirety of The Lord of the Rings. We're going to be going through the Silmarillion next, which, again, that'll probably be the rest of this year because we still have to get through the appendices of The Return of the King after we finish the actual read-through. So we've still got at least a few more months left in Return of the King before we get to the Silmarillion. So stick around, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all those good things. Support if you can, memberships, super chats, super thanks, the Patreon page. Let's get into reading this chapter. So it starts here saying that the city of Gondor was in doubt and dread because Denethor was dead, Theoden was dead, laying in their citadel, and the new king that had come to them in the night, meaning Aragorn, had disappeared in a war with powers that were too great and too dark to comprehend, and no news had come back for however many days it's been. And so, yeah, everyone's sort of in a panic. But it does say that when the captains were but 2 days gone, Lady Éowyn bade the women who tended her to bring her raiment, and rose, and she went out with her arm in a sling of linen, and went to the warden of the houses of healing, and said, I can no longer just sit around. I need to do something. And the guy's like, look, you're not even fully healed yet. You shouldn't have gotten out of bed for a few days yet. Please. And she's like, I'm fine, at least in body. Um, but if I can't do something, I'm gonna get sick for real. Like I'm gonna lose it. So we need to, I want to do something. It's a pretty awesome moment because he looks at her here, and he's like, tall she stood there, her eyes bright in her white face, her right hand clenched as she turned and gazed out of his window that opened to the east. And he sighed and shook his head. You're not gonna change your mind, you know. Ooh, this is when, yeah, she's like, who commands the city is what she's asking. He's like, I don't really know, but I think Lord Faramir is by right the steward. She's like, where can I find him? He's in this house, lady, sorely hurt, but I do not know. And she's like, bring him to me, then you will know. Oh, this is when she tells Faramir, I cannot lie in sloth idle and caged. I looked for death in battle, but I did not die, yet the battle still goes on. Faramir's like, I'm a prisoner of the healers as well as you. What do you want me to do? Ooh. He looked at her, and being a man whom pity deeply stirred, it seemed to him that her loveliness amid her grief would pierce his heart, and she looked at him and saw the grave tenderness in her eyes, and yet knew, for she was bred among men of war, that here was one whom no rider of the mark would outmatch in battle. So this is pretty cool. So he's sitting here telling her, look, there's nothing we can do. The captains have ridden to war. We're both consigned to be here with the healers, you and I both. But it says here, a tear sprang in her eye and fell in her cheek like a glistening raindrop. Her proud hair drooped a little, and quietly, more as if speaking to herself than him, but the healers would have me lie abed 7 days yet, and my window does not look eastward. And Faramir smiled with his heart filled with pity. Your window does not look eastward? Pff, not a problem. We can take care of that. And this I will command the warden. Here you will find me, walking and waiting, and also looking east. It would ease my care if you would speak to me, or walk at whiles with me. Ooh, burgeoning romance. It's taking place. Ooh. How would I ease your care, my lord? I do not desire the speech of living men. And he says, would you have my plain answer? She says she would. And he said, Éowyn of Rohan, I say to you that you are beautiful. In the valleys of our hills there are still flowers fair and bright, and maidens fairer still, but neither flower nor lady have I seen till now in Gondor so lovely and yet so sorrowful. It would ease my heart if while the sun still shines I could see you still, for you and I have both passed under the wings of shadow, and the same hand drew us back. Oh. Now she sort of denies this, right? She's like, no, not me. Shadow lies on me still. Look not to me for healing. I am a shield maiden, and my hand is ungentle, although I thank you for this, that I need not keep to my chamber. And it says here that Faramir for a long while walked alone in the garden, and his glance now strayed rather to the house than to the eastward walls, because he is now fascinated, Lord Faramir is. He has been captivated um, by this strange woman not of Gondor. She changes his mind, of course, or she changes her mind, of course. They walk together. Oh, oh, here's the scene. They're looking out. It's been 7 days since Aragorn and them rode out, and they've been meeting daily. And it says here that time halted, and so they stood as their hands met and clasped, though they did not know it. And still they waited, for they knew not what. Oh, it reminds me of Numenor, says Faramir. Romance. Before the sun had fallen far from the noon out of the east, there came a great eagle flying and bore tidings beyond hope from the lords of the west, crying, Sing now, ye people of the Tower of Anor, for the realm of Sauron is ended forever, and the Dark Tower is thrown down. Your king hath passed through, and he is victorious. The tree that was withered shall be renewed, and he shall plant it in the high places, and the city shall be blessed. Okay, so this is a part I did not remember this. So when I watched the films, I always questioned why they, in the films, why they had Éowyn sort of pining over Aragorn, because that was something that I never took away from the books when I read the books as a child, and even in my teen years. But here it clearly shows there's this section as Faramir is going out and preparing for Aragorn's arrival, and she doesn't want to go with him, and he's asking her, why do you tarry here and do not go rejoicing where your brother awaits you? And she says, do you not know? And he's like, there's two reasons that that might be, but which one it is, I don't know. He's like, it's either because your desire, he says, either because you don't want to look on Lord Aragorn in his triumph because the way you feel now, it's not going to bring you any joy, or you don't want to go because your desire is still to be near me, and maybe for both of those reasons, but you yourself cannot choose. Do you not love me, or will you not love me? And she says, I wished to be loved by another, but I desire no man's pity. And he replies, that I know. You desired to have the love of Lord Aragorn, because he was high and puissant. Puissant? I don't know this word, puissant. And you wish to have renown and glory and be lifted far above the mean things that crawl on the earth. She looked at him. She looks at him long and steady, and he says, "Do not scorn pity. That is the gift of a gentle heart, Éowyn. But I do not offer you my pity. I deem beyond even the words of the elven tongue to tell, and I love you." Oh, he says. Then the heart of Éowyn changed, or at least she understood it, and suddenly her winter passed, and the sun shone on her. Behold, the shadow has departed. I stand in Minas Anor, the Tower of the Sun. No longer do I desire to be a queen, she replied. And he says, that's good, because I'm not a king. But I will wed the White Lady of Rohan if it will be her will. So this is when she finally you know. But I did not remember that at all from the books. Like I always watched the Peter Jackson films and felt like they sort of pushed that Éowyn sort of pining after Aragorn thing a little too hard, but it's right here in the text. I did not remember that actually being a thing. I thought that was an interpretation, and this is why I'm rereading this series for the Mondays in Middle-earth, because there are things that I just don't remember. Faramir meets Aragorn in the midst of those assembled, kneels and says, "The last steward of Gondor begs leave to surrender his office." But Aragorn gave it back, gave the white rod of his office back, and says, "The office is not ended. It shall be thine and thy heirs as long as my line shall last. Do now thy office." Oh, that's awesome. People of Gondor shall he, Isildur's son, Elendil's son of Numenor, Elisad of the line of Valandil, shall he be king and enter the city and dwell there. And all the host and all the people cried, yea, with one voice, a unanimous agreement that Aragorn should be king. I love how Eorth keeps getting interrupted when she's talking here. She's trying to tell her kinsman like this story. And this king, and that person, and this person. Faramir has brought the crown of Eornor, the last king, shaped like the helm of the guards of the citadel, save that it was loftier and all white, and the wings at either side were wrought of pearl and silver in the likeness of the wings of a sea-bird, for it was the emblem of the king who came over the sea, with 7 gems of adamant set in the circlet, and upon its summit was a single jewel, the light of which went up like a flame. In the words of Elendil, I'm not going to try to butcher this, but I might. Et earlo, I'm not going to be able to say this. Elrena utilian, cineme moruven arhelnitien ambarmeta. And those are the words that Elendil spoke when he came over to the sea on the wings of the wind. Out of the great sea in Middle-earth I am come, in this place will I abide, and my heirs into the ending of the world. Then it says, to the wonder of many, Aragorn did not put the crown upon his head, but gave it back to Faramir. Ah, in token of the labor of valor of those who have worked to bring me to my inheritance, I would have either the ring bearer or Mithrandir set the crown upon my head. For more than any, Mithrandir has been the mover of all things that have been accomplished, and this is his victory. So Frodo comes, gives the crown to Faramir, who bears it to Gandalf. Then Gandalf puts it upon Aragorn's head. Now come the days of the king, and may they be blessed, for the thrones of the Valar endure. See, we get these moments that have happened throughout the Lord of the Rings, and I've mentioned on them multiple times. Every time Aragorn has this moment where he stands up and it says that he like there's this glory within him that his companions look at and he looks different. He looks like, something more than just a man. And it happens again here. As he stood, it seemed to him, as he stood, it seemed to them that he was revealed for the first time. Tall as the sea kings of old, he stood above all that was near. Ancient of days he seemed, and yet in the flower of manhood, with wisdom upon his brow and strength and healing in his hands, and a light was about him. So here we get the days that followed the crowning. He's sitting in the Hall of Kings and pronouncing judgments. Aragorn thinks he's getting dismissed, but he's actually being appointed to the White Company, the Guard of Faramir. You should be its captain and dwell in Emin Arden in honor and peace. So they're going to completely destroy Minas Ithil and Morgul Vale. And though it may be made clean, but for many years no man shall dwell there. On the 8th day of May, the riders of Rohan were ready, and rode off by the north way, and with them went the sons of Elrond. Aragorn was loth for the fellowship to be dissolved. He says, at last all such things must end, but I would have you wait a little while longer, for the end of the deeds that you have shared has not yet come. A day draws near that I have looked for in all the years of my manhood, and when it comes I would have my friends beside me. But of that day he would say no more. In those days the companions of the ring dwelt together in a fair house with Gandalf, and just on vacation, basically. The third age of the world is ended. All the lands that you see and those that lie around them shall be the dwellings of men. For now is the dominion of men, and the elder kindred shall fade or depart. And Aragorn says, I would still have your counsel, but Gandalf says, not for long now. The third age was my age. I was the enemy of Sauron, and my work is finished. I shall go soon. The burden is now with you and your kindred. Oh, this is awesome. So this is where Gandalf says, turn your face where all seems barren and cold. And Aragorn turned, there was a stony slope behind him. And as he looked, he was aware that in the waste there was a growing thing that stood. He saw out of the very edge of snow that sprang a sapling tree more than 3 feet high. Already it had put forth young leaves, dark and silver beneath, and upon its slender crown it bore one small cluster of flowers, whose white petals shone like the sunlit snow. A scion to the eldest of trees. But how comes it here? It is not yet 7 years old. Gandalf looked at it and said, "This is a sapling of the line of Nimloth the Fair, that was a seedling of Galathilion, and the fruit of Telperion of many names, eldest of trees. Who can say how it came to be here? But this is an ancient hallow, and ere the kings failed or the tree withered in the court, a fruit may have been set here." Oh, ho, 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 ho. So Aragorn plucks it and brings it back to the citadel, pulls up the uprooted, withered tree, but with reverence, and they did not burn it, but laid it to rest in the silence of Rathdinnen, and planted the new tree, and swiftly and gladly it began to grow. And when the month of June entered, it was laden with blossoms. And Aragorn says, "The sign has been given, the day is not far off." And it was the day before midsummer when messengers came from Amundin to the city, and they say that there was a riding of fair folk out of the north. We know what's about to happen. Master Elrond, mighty among elves and men, bearing the scepter of Unuminimus, and beside him upon a grey palfrey rode Arwen his daughter, even star of her people. And Frodo, when he saw her coming glimmering in the evening with stars on her brow and a sweet fragrance above her, was moved with great wonder, and said to Gandalf, "At last I understand why we have waited. This is the ending. Not only the day shall be beloved, but night too shall be beautiful and blessed, and all its fears passed away." Oh, and Aragorn the King Elessar wedded Arwen Undumiel in the City of Kings upon the day of midsummer, and the tale of their long waiting and labors was come to fulfillment. Mm. Next chapter is Many Partings, which is when we actually start to see everybody begin their journeys home. But it's not over, because we still have to do the great trials of the Shire that come later, the scouring of the Shire, which is such great stuff. I really wish they would have covered that in the film. I understand why they didn't. It's worth it. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. We'll do more. We're always doing more. Support if you can, please. Super chats, whatever you can afford, $2, $5, $15. Thanks to those of you who do support memberships here on the channel. They start at $3 a month and go up however you want to contribute. There's the Patreon page. We'll be back next week with more. Same time, same place. So until then, everybody, stay safe. Happy reading.